think there's been massive changes. I mean, one of the changes is that we're incredibly busy this year. We were lucky to be busy last year, given I work in the digital and tech space, and there was never a real lapse in terms of the talent needs in that space. But this year, for the first half of the year, it's the best, most successful year Heidrick as a company has had, and I think that's a real testament to how hot the market is in terms of talent and how many companies are making key changes. Secondly, the movement of talent has definitely changed. Australia, you currently can't bring in international executives, or it's very hard to. And typically we have an international component of all the searches that we do here, but now it's more focused on bringing returning expats home to Australia, rather than perhaps attracting someone that's never been to Australia and, can't come and bring their family out here and see the beaches and the harbour and kind of be wooed by that. So it's definitely a change in how we attract international talent. And then also, I think there's been a real change in terms of how we can reach people. People are a lot more accessible when they're working from home. They're not in the office, in meetings, doing face-to-face. They're at home, in their kitchens, in their studies, and they can easily take a call from us and quite candidly talk about different opportunities. So I think people are definitely more accessible. And one of the really nice themes or takeaways from this also is that I think people are really quite open and transparent, more so now. There's a level of informality. Often we'll be interviewing someone and their kid will run into the Zoom meeting, and you really get more of an insight into someone's personal life and who they really are, as opposed to someone fronting up to a face-to-face interview. I think the way we work is going to be very different. Before the pandemic, people were getting on flights for one meeting to go, and whether it was to another city or to another country. And I think we've really tapped into, even though it's not the most ideal way to do things, you can speak to people on the phone or through Zoom or Microsoft Teams, however it may be. So, I think there's definitely going to be changes in the way that we collaborate, especially across countries and across cities. And then I also think remote working flexibly is going to be, a major theme that comes out of this. So many organizations implementing new ways of working, promoting flexible working. Sometimes you only have to be in the office 3 days a week, and you can work flexibly wherever you feel safe and comfortable for the other couple of days. Some of the big tech organizations have kind of, said you can work flexibly for, 5 days of the week, as long as you're getting your work done. You don't have that kind of face-to-face interaction. In Australia, we've been broadly very lucky, but I'm in a lockdown right now here in Sydney, and I think everyone, most people do crave that face-to-face and social interaction, and that's a lot of the reason why people do go to work, because they enjoy the people that they work with. So it's finding that balance. There was definitely a significant amount, but our government provided organisations with a lot of support, so that if they were earning under a certain amount of revenue, they would be kind of supplemented by the government to try and make sure that people kept their jobs. And there was also really strong support for people who had been laid off. But now this year, we're back to, I think, our lowest level of unemployment that we've had as a country for a while. So, definitely we've seen a massive kind of hiring spree this year. And, I think the effects in Australia were not as hard felt as they were in, the US and some other countries. I think Australia has a good balance in terms of, providing support, but the incentive is purely around getting back into the workforce. So there's definitely a theme of, people wanting to return to work rather than stay on benefits from what I understand. There's definitely support services here in Australia. There is lots of, online counselling and therapy that people can access, whether that is through, Zoom or whether it's, calling up as well. There's a number of different services. One of them is called Lifeline. And the other is that we have a really strong mental health plan here in Australia. So you can go to your GP and they subsidise, some of the initial sessions that you would have with a psychologist. So it does kind of take away some of that initial burden on the individual to pay for, quite expensive therapy and counselling sessions. So it kind of gets people in the door and gets some initial help for people who are really kind of crying out for it. But it definitely is a major issue. So that's definitely part of just the Australian government providing that. And it's, I think, definitely those kinds of organisations have been given more support, in the time from the start of the pandemic, but a lot of these services were very much established before the pandemic. I think the first thing that comes to mind would be communication. Being able to communicate clearly and openly is definitely a strength that I think is really valuable in an HR professional. Being able to get your point across to a broad range of stakeholders and people that you encounter on a day-to-day basis is really critical. Advice. I would say my advice would be to be authentic and open in the way that you go about your work. I think as part of working in recruitment and executive search, you really take on the responsibility of representing a client's brand. And in the way that you go about that, I think, transparency, honesty, and being authentic is really core to that. So, when we work with clients, we really try and understand the company as best we can. We understand the culture by interviewing and getting to know a lot of the executive team to understand what the people are like so we can then best represent them in the market. And I think then it's also the process of then delivering that message and, not overselling an organisation and not overselling a candidate in the way that we then present that back. I think in my role, it's always being able to better understand what the client needs from us. So I think it's really investing that time up front to understand the brief, understand the organisation, so we can better achieve results. And when we haven't done that up front, I think that's when you can fall into some traps.